Like, I get it. I've been there here. But here's the beauty of Sean and the front office. When Sean took over in 2016, and I've said this before, there were no ties at all to the Brooklyn trade with Boston here. He could care less if the Celtics got the number 1 pick in the draft or the number 3 pick in the draft, because his fingerprints and his current staff's fingerprints were not on that. He didn't have to go out and chase it and try to be a 28-win team by signing guys to $7 or $8 million contracts and just kind of piecemealing a roster, because he couldn't, from an ego standpoint, he couldn't let Boston get the number 1 or number 2 pick. He didn't do that. They basically hit rock bottom, which eventually turned into Jason Tatum. Jaylen Brown, I believe, was the year before. And that's how the beauty of this Nets roster was built in 2016 and 17 and 18. And nobody is faulting Brooklyn for going out and signing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. If you gave 30 teams a lie detector test and said to you, it's going to cost you cap space, they would go out and do that. Every team, to be able to get, especially Kevin Durant here. The James Harden trade, if you said back then in 2021, we're going to trade 3 or 4 first-round picks and pick swaps, and we're going to keep the big 3 of Harden, Durant, and Irving for the foreseeable future, every team would do it. Now, it's turned into a major disaster because Harden went to another team. He got traded. He didn't want to be there anymore. Everything has kind of, spiraled out of control. Ben Simmons, who knows what we're going to happen here. But going back to Kyrie, it all comes down to the Brooklyn front office. It's like, when is enough enough? This roster right now isn't a championship team. Could it be there in a month from now or 2 months from now? Maybe. But everything that Brooklyn has kind of held themselves to, as far as from an accountability standpoint, from hard work, it's basically kind of out the window right now. And if you're Brooklyn and things continue, and as I said, even if this was 6-1 or 7-1, and there's no accountability from your point guard, he doubled down on Friday night. And I know he took down the tweet. He doubled down when he said basically that there was nothing wrong. There was no endorsement. He doubled down on the Alex Jones conspiracy theory here, which is another story in another day. So if your point guard doesn't have accountability and your organization, what do? Do you send him away? Do you tell him not to come back, considering he's not part of your future? Do you care what happens with this season, and you go back to your roots of what it was in 2016 and 17? We're seeing it in Utah right now. They don't need Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert. We're seeing it in San Antonio right now. We're seeing it across the league, where sometimes subtracting a player actually works out in the future. Who cares that you owe Houston a boatload of draft picks? Build the roster the right way. Build the roster with players that you acquired in 2017, that you found under the radar in 2018. And what happens if Kevin Durant comes and asks for your trade? You deal with that later. The value of Kevin Durant is still high. Are you ever going to get a home run package? Probably not. But you deal with that later right now. But I do think internally you've got to figure out what to do with Kyrie Irving here. There's a lot of hurt feelings out there. And if Brooklyn kind of sits on their hands and lets this play out, there's going to be another Kyrie Irving incident 2 weeks from now or a month from now. And the Nets will look worse than they do right now. And another thing, shame on the NBA. If you're going to send out a press release, put the player's name on it. If you're going to send out a press release basically saying that, we condemn anti-Semitic speech, and which we all agree on, put the player's name on it. We all know who you were talking about here. So that's my 10 minutes on the Nets and Kyrie Irving. I'll probably write about something on that next week. I figured I wanted to get something off my chest here because it's been sitting with me for 2 days here, watching this situation unfold. There's a lot of good people in that Nets organization here. But I think they have to look at themselves in the mirror today, next week, and figure out what's the best interest of the organization in the future. Not just about this year, but in the future.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.